Today on #Lawyered, Andrea and I tackle the Lori Vallow story, the next streaming true crime documentary coming out of Madison Story, Idaho. We'll talk about the facts, the timeline, and all the conspiracy theories that come with it. Welcome back to #Lawyered. Andrea and I are here today, and we're going to jump into something that we've been talking about doing for a while, which is talking about true crime, and especially the next one that's going to come out.
Y'all, I don't know about you, but I love true crime dramas and podcasts. My favorite murder, Looking at You. Love you guys.
And truthfully, Andrea's got a lot more experience at this than I do.
Just a little.
But this story is one that a lot of people across the world, I mean, it looks like it's the world, definitely in our country, have been following. And as we're going to get into, have been actually contributing to just the drama and the conspiracy and the investigations that have gone along with it. And it's what I've been calling the Lori Vallow story. And it comes out of rural Idaho, but it goes all the way into Hawaii, and there's all sorts of crazy twists and turns, and it's just it's a nuts story, but it's true, and it's happening right now before us. This isn't something, digging out something that happened back in the 60s.
This isn't even like East Area rapist level old, right? This is like now.
Yeah.
Or like Zodiac killer old. It is today.
And the case is still ongoing. It's
absolutely.
At the very beginning stages.
And the investigation is still very much in the beginning.
Right. That's a great point. And that's not something, I mean, we're talking a little bit light about this, but really it's a great opportunity for everybody because a lot of people, O.J. Simpson, we got in after the fact. I mean, there were some parts of the investigation that people were aware of at the beginning.
Sure.
But that was in the 90s, and so social media and just communication speed wasn't as fast.
Wait, you mean there wasn't Twitter in the 90s?
Allegedly, there was not.
Whoa, I'm too young to remember that, y'all. I'm like freaking like in a cradle over here. No, I'm kidding.
Younger than me. But this is one we get to actually see how the investigation unfolds and how people outside of law enforcement have actually participated in it, which is crazy to me.
Which is, it's so novel and it's so new that people outside of law enforcement can get to do this, and we're seeing this in cold cases like the East Area rapist and the Zodiac killer. And then, obviously, other true crime stories. But when people are contributing on like Reddit threads and social media, I think that's really exciting. It's like the dream of being an armchair detective come to life.
Well, and I'll play a little devil's advocate later on when we get to that part, just to push it a little bit.
I know, we'll buckle in until then.
There we go. So kind of to run through everything.
Yes, let's talk about the story.
Through, some of these facts, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. We are going to put a timeline up in the show notes so that anybody who wants to go back through and look through all of the different things that happened, because there's a lot, and some of the ancillary stuff we're not even really going to touch because it's ancillary, but it's still just the way the puzzle pieces fit together.
It would take up the entire podcast to just go through the timeline bit by bit.
Sure.
So it's take a look at the show notes. They'll be there. And DM us if you have any questions.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. On Instagram. Find us on Instagram, #Lawyer. DM us. Always happy to answer questions. And actually, while we're talking about this, topics, things like that people want to hear about, let us know.
Please do. We want to be recording what you guys are interested in. So please leave a comment below. Did you like this episode? Do you want to hear more about this stuff? Or do you want to hear more about legally things? For sure.
So let's jump in. We've got Lori Vallow, who was married to Chad Daybell at the time. Those are the key players in this entire story. In November of 2019, two of Lori's children, JJ and Tylee, went missing.
Dun dun dun.
Right.
Not to make light of missing children, obviously, it's terrible, but a little humor in a terrible tragedy is not a bad thing.
Well, and I think you got to look at just how, once we get through this, all the crazy stuff that goes on. I mean, it's nuts how crazy it is. So some of the relatives of Lori were concerned. They hadn't seen the kids since September. It's been 2 months. They report them missing. Law enforcement shows up at Daybell and Vallow's house, questions them. They say, well, kids are with some other relatives in Arizona. No big deal.
All the way in Arizona.
They're just staying with relatives.
And they're minors.
Law enforcement thinks, this is kind of weird. Not really sure about this. They go back, they get a search warrant, come back the next day, and Daybell and Vallow are gone.
Whoosh.
So obviously extremely suspicious at this point. Turns out the Daybell and Vallow fled to Hawaii. And this is in November, right? So
I hear it's nice weather in Hawaii in November.
Well, I guess they figure they get outside of the contiguous United States and be okay, maybe.
To yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'd pull a Snowden if I wanted to go somewhere and not be like extradited and not stay in the United States.
That would make more sense. I don't know if these people are as intelligent as some others, but nevertheless, January 25th, the Kauai, Hawaii police pull them over because there's a search warrant out for them.
Yes.
People are looking for them. They pull them over and they end up searching the car. Don't find the kids, but they serve them with a warrant that says, or an order to produce the children by January 30th. So that's 5 days. Produce the children in Madison Story, Idaho by January 30th, or else, basically.
So basically, when you say produce the children, I mean, what do you mean? You mean literally go to court with the kids?
Yeah. Grab them by their belt loops and bring them into court. Bring them into court. So obviously, they blow this deadline, naturally. I mean, no one thought they were going to do it. February 20th, the Kauai police actually execute an arrest warrant on Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. Bring them in. Vallow is held without bail. They actually fought really hard to get her bail, but it was very obvious she was a flight risk. She fled to Hawaii already. Obviously. So right decision, obviously, to keep her without bail. And then here's where everything becomes a reality. Is on January 8th, FBI agents found human remains on Daybell's property while executing a search warrant. Daybell's then charged with, Vallow was arrested on February 20th. Daybell wasn't arrested at that time. He was arrested on June 8th after the FBI found human remains on his property while executing the search warrant, charged him with concealment or destruction of evidence. And then, sadly, on June 13th, the police confirmed that those remains that were found were the remains of JJ and Tylee. And so then now it's all of a sudden we've got these mysteries, and now it's like, okay, it's still a mystery, but something happened to these kids.
Something nefarious. I mean, they're literally dead.
Right.
On this guy's property, which to me, what dingbat puts a dead body on his own property?
Well, and no one ever said criminals were that smart, but no, I agree. There's something that's very strange.
Yeah.
And it's very strange. Now, here's the crazy. There's a whole bunch of other crazy coincidences that stem from this. So that's the timeline. That's where we sit right now. June 13th. That was 2 weeks ago. But prior to some of this stuff and during some of these things, for one, somebody had been using Tylee, the little girl. They've been using her phone to text message people and to Venmo some people some money while they were missing.
Someone has her phone.
Right.
And they have her password. They have her Venmo account.
Right. Well, and they found the phone in Lori Vallow's possession. So the assumption is, it's an assumption. We don't have any evidence yet, but the assumption is she was potentially doing that to kind of pull the attention off and say, well, no, she's alive. She's somewhere. She's Venmoing. She's texting. She may be alive.
This is very much like the episode on You, which is like on Netflix, where, spoiler alert, right?
Well, don't give away the ending, but yeah. But no, exactly. And so that was going on. But here's the crazier part to me. You start looking at some of the other players that are not the main characters in this story. So Lori Vallow was originally married to another man, and then her brother, named Alex Cox, kills Lori Vallow's husband.
Allegedly in self-defense. So kills Lori Vallow's original husband. And this is not that long before before she met, before she ended up linking up with Daybell. So kills her husband, and then Cox, her brother, who killed her first husband, dies of unknown causes in December. Dun dun dun.
Just kind of crazy. Then, in October of 2019, Daybell's wife dies of natural causes as well.
How convenient! The lovebirds can get married.
2 weeks later, that's the crazy. So Vallow's husband dies, is killed. Then Daybell's wife dies, and then 2 weeks later, the two of them get married. I mean, obviously, everybody that hears that screaming, okay, this is obviously some big conspiracy or plan between the two of them to make this happen. Now, we'll get into some of that, and I think part of it could be true. Some people are just weird too. Some people are strange. I mean, because here's the other part: is they were also she met Daybell because she became a huge fan of his writings for this movement that they were really into, and it's kind of a cultish movement.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about this movement.
And it led to, and I don't know all the specifics because I didn't read their doctrine or anything like that. Just didn't really want
Doctrine, yes. Well, this sounds very theological, Austin.
Yeah, theological is a nice way to put it. She felt that she was helping prep the return of Jesus Christ. She thought she was a prophet that was helping prep that.
A little David Koreshi of Waco feel.
Yes.
Yeah, except no seals or whatever.
And not as big of a following.
Yeah.
Still looks like death came of it though, which is that's the crazy part about it. So
Cults, man, I'm telling you. Don't get into him.
Well, and so, all these crazy things are going on. So one of the things that has come out of this, and this is, we're going a little bit out of order here from the pre-show screening, but what's been crazy is to see, obviously we've seen social media and society develop over time with how people communicate and how law enforcement has pursued investigations. We've also seen the exponential growth and interest for true crime documentaries with Netflix and all the streaming that occurs now.
And all of the podcasts, that you hear on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. I mean, they've exploded. It's a genre onto its own on all these streaming platforms.
Right.
There's so many options.
And so what's happened here is that law enforcement has actually started using the two examples that I've seen are Facebook groups and Reddit groups, and using suggestions and thoughts and theories, and started reviewing those and actually letting it affect how they've pursued their investigation.
Which is fascinating to me, because this is completely unprecedented.
Absolutely.
I mean, the closest thing that we have to this previously is a tip line.
Right.
Someone calls in and they have a tip, and that's it. But now we have people on these Reddit threads and Facebook groups posting left and right these various different theories. And, these people, I like to call them armchair detectives.
Yeah.
They can spend hours and hours poring over all these pieces, looking at publicly available documents, because it is shocking how much is publicly available in an investigation.
Right.
Truly, it kind of blows my mind, even as a lawyer.
Right.
And so we have all these armchair detectives, and they have some very sophisticated theories. They
do. And so one of the examples that I'll put out there before we dive into it more is there's a fact that the last time that the children were seen alive was September either 7th or 8th, 2019 in Yellowstone Park. There's some pictures of them from the park. And a lot of one of the theories that was on there is that the bodies, and this is before they discovered the bodies on June 8th,
yes,
the remains, that the bodies were deposited in one of the hot boils in Yellowstone and that they were disintegrated. Which, taking the emotional part out of it, not a bad theory, because you wouldn't find the remains at their house, for example. If that happened. But what happened was people were proposing that on the Reddit group. I think Christmas Misery was the name of the Reddit group that was proposing this. The FBI actually was prompted from there to set up a website, kind of a Dropbox of sorts, where people who were there at Yellowstone on that date were asked to go and deposit any videos or picture files that they had into that box, so the FBI could take a look at it and see, is there a theory here? That's crazy to me.
Yes, absolutely.
It's crazy. I don't mean in a bad way, but just it's a crazy thought.
It's astounding, I think.
Astounding is a better word.
Yes.
Astounding is a better word, because my experience with law enforcement is that they don't want to be told how to do their job. And I'm not criticizing for that. That's just...
It's just your experience.
Right. And they have training, and they're taught to do certain things. They have a chain of command, and they follow that. And so if, even as me as the lawyer says, hey, why don't you... They don't want to hear that. They've got their chain of command. The FBI, on the other hand, is listening to these people on Reddit and on Facebook. And I think it's probably because of what you said is the massive amount of resources that are out there. What's basically happening is the FBI is potentially not having to track down every single theory. They can kind of look at the pool and think, okay, well, this tracks and this tracks. You know what? Maybe we should go check this out. So
it seems like it's cutting down the work for departments like the FBI and having these theories, valid or a little crazy, pop up. So it cuts down the time for the development of creating these theories and creating these possible puzzle pieces.
So in your opinion, just on this topic alone,
absolutely,
do you think this is a good thing, that this precedent is starting?
So I think it's both a good thing, but there's also a point to be that I want to get your opinion on. So first of all, I do think it's a really great thing, because anything that's going to speed up the process for finding missing persons, especially missing children, is fantastic in my book, because I can't even remember the statistic, right? But if a child is gone longer than, 48 hours, they're probably dead.
I've always heard 48 hours, but I think I get that from the first 48 and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I probably get it from a Dateline episode.
Right. But regardless, you're right. If you don't hit it fast and you don't figure it out fast and you don't get on the trail fast, it's harder and harder to gather evidence.
To gather evidence and then also get the child home alive.
Right.
Not traumatized.
Right. Sorry, I was assuming the worst, but yes, you're right.
Well, you have a little hope, Austin.
Right. Sorry. On the other end of the spectrum on some of these things.
But I do think that's really great. And it also, I think, affords for multiple perspectives, right? So someone who maybe is a writer is going to be able to see things in a different way than someone who has been with the FBI in, a missing persons department for years and years and years, right? Because offering fresh perspectives and fresh ideas can only help, I think.
I agree with that. I mean, there's a sense of, you and I were talking before the show about being jaded or hardened to certain things.
Yes.
And so there probably is a sense of that with law enforcement that maybe a fresh set of eyes makes sense. So no, that's a great point. And I think to flip it on the other side, I've got some concerns about it. I agree with what you said, but playing devil's advocate here, I do have some concerns because I think in our society today, we've got a lot of people that they love these true crime documentaries. They love getting wrapped up in them. And in a joking way, a lot of them like to say, well, I could have solved this, or I could have been the detective, and I should have been a detective. Just like people say a lot of times, I should have been a lawyer.
Oh, I love that one. It's so funny.
Think about it. But people say that all the time.
They do.
My concern is that you're going to have a lot of vigilantes coming in with some crazy ideas. And, we worry sometimes about the power of the mob. At least I do. I think, and that's something that has been a common theme throughout world history.
Sure.
Sometimes the power of the mob is a bad thing.
Bread and circuses, anyone?
Right. Well, French Revolution, all those kinds of things.
Yes.
There were some good parts about that, but it swung the other way eventually. And so,
bloody.
Power of the mob. Here, you've got all these crazy theories, and you somewhat, again, as I always do in the show, going apocalyptic. You right, let's burn the ships. You end up with a little bit of a potential witch hunt situation going on. You got some McCarthyism going on where people can come in and say whatever they want. Now, we're not here yet, but potentially people can come in, say whatever rhetoric they want to lay out there, and all of a sudden you've got law enforcement sniffing up your trail. And that from a defense lawyer's perspective, that's scary because it's kind of the idea of if a cop is following you and they want to stop you for a DWI, they will find a reason to stop you. If they are tracking down a trail, and they are human, regardless of their training, if they latch onto a story, or a theory, and want to run that into the ground, they're probably going to find the breadcrumbs along the way to get them to where they want to go. And that's a bit scary for me from a defense perspective and from an individual rights perspective because of the vigilantism that potentially could come out of that. I think you also will have a lot of people that, I think another theory of that is, okay, well, does that now make them a confronting witness or, a opposing witness, an investigator, to where they're subject to the Fifth Amendment right of a defendant to cross-examine his accusers at trial? Because then I think that's a problem too. Because
I think I'm going to interrupt you. I think we need to maybe back up and get into that. So when you say, they're a confronting witness, right?
Yeah.
Most people are going to be like, excuse me, what?
Yeah.
What does that mean? So why don't we explain this?
Yeah.
Why don't we explain accusing witness and how that works into your Fifth Amendment right?
Right. Yeah. No, thank you, Andrea. So everybody who's accused of a crime by somebody, that person who accused them, the defendant has a right to confront them or cross-examine them or force them to come testify in court as part of the Bill of Rights, as part of your Fifth Amendment privilege. It's not subsumed, it's in conjunction with your Miranda rights, which we'll talk about those in another episode. But so you can't, that's part of the reason that the red light cameras are not, you can't arrest somebody or issue a criminal citation for a red light camera because you can't cross-examine a camera in court. And so that's the reason it's a civil citation, not a criminal citation. So,
fun fact, I doubt a lot of people knew that.
Well, and the reason is because they went to the Texas Supreme Court and they said, well, you can't confront a camera, get out of here. So,
yeah,
so the thing that I'm talking about here is you've got somebody, Snow Globe 37, logs onto Reddit.
Snow Globe 37.
I don't know why I came up with that one, but it just came out. They come on the website and they say, hey, here's my theory because I saw this and I saw this and I found this picture. And they accuse Lori Vallow of doing those things. Well, she's got a right to confront that person. I think she absolutely still has that right. Fifth Amendment, you can't take that away regardless. But I think you could create an incentive for people to get in to try to get their spotlight. Like all of a sudden, I'm a key witness in this murder investigation. I'm going to get to be on a documentary. I'm going to get the limelight for a second. And
I want to be on the next Netflix documentary. I want to be interviewed by the Huffington Post.
Because that's going to lead to a reality show and then all those, all that kind of stuff.
Money, money, money.
And that concerns me because that's not what our justice system is about. Not the criminal side, at least.
Sure, and I get that, but I would maybe pause it back at you that at the end of the day, right? So the FBI and the police, but especially the FBI, right? Federal Bureau of Investigation. They've been doing this for a really long time. They have very advanced behavioral units and various other units that I think, when working in conjunction, should be able to sniff out the authenticity or the legitimacy of all these different ideas that are being posted. So to me, if and this might be a little controversial, right? If the police and the FBI are doing their job right, wouldn't that then mitigate and minimize the number of people who are positing theories out there for the wrong reasons?
It should.
It should, right?
At the same time, I've been involved in way too many cases where I've seen an investigation of a very basic misdemeanor assault go completely sideways from trained, seasoned veteran police officers. And so the problem is that humans are humans. I mean, I referenced O.J. Simpson earlier. The big theory in that case was a rush to judgment. I mean, aside from the if glove does not fit, you must acquit. But the big theory in that case was the police assumed it was O.J. Simpson from the beginning. Therefore, they tried to line up the dots so that it would make it happen. That's part of the concern I have, because you're going to see that happen in a purely law enforcement run investigation. But if you've got a real sexy theory that comes out from a Reddit reader, or let's say it's a congregation of a large group like this Christmas Misery group that come in, that you got
what a name
20,
too.
Right, I know. But you got 20,000 people saying this happened, this happened, this happened, and law enforcement saying, dang, that's actually, that makes sense. That's pretty good. And then they just, instead of trying to investigate what happened, you try to find what could make this true. And then you got a problem with that. Now, swing the pendulum the other way too. Law enforcement officers, many of them that testify on major cases, because they're detectives. They've been on the stand many times. It's not like maybe it's a guy's first DWI traffic stop and I'm cross-examining him on a Class B misdemeanor, which, grand scheme of things, murder, misdemeanor, I mean, totally different.
A little different.
Right. But think about this. You've got Snow Globe 1, 2, 3, like I said earlier. I should have came up with a better acronym, but we're rolling with it. That user then has to go on the stand and set up to cross-examination from a seasoned criminal defense lawyer. I mean, I guess maybe I'm making my own point here that the pendulum does swing back the other way, because if it's a very thinly veiled theory, then defense lawyers should be able to break that down. But it just seems like there's some danger there of us wasting state and federal resources tracking down theories of crazy theories from people who are not trained, are just true crime junkies, and maybe are looking for spotlight.
So then maybe, in order to get around that then, so what do you think? Should there be some sort of armchair detective committee that's created of objective, neutral third persons that goes through and says, okay, we've been following all the Reddit stories, and that can take a long time because the Reddit threads, I'm telling you, you get sucked in. But we've looked at all the Reddit threads, we've looked at all the Facebook threads, and here we've culled the ones that we think actually have some legitimacy to them. And here are the ones that we think might be valid, and we're going to put them on our very official Armchair Detective Committee website. And at that point, that's when the FBI or the police can go and say, okay, it seems like there is some legitimacy to these theories. And so at that point, kind of cut down on, Mary Jo, aka Snow Globe 1, 2, 3, being like, well, I'm on cross-examination and maybe my theory fails, but I'm going to be on a Netflix documentary.
Right,
so.
I'm on TV. Because this case is going to be televised when it goes to trial.
Oh, 100%.
If it goes to trial. If she doesn't plea out, which she probably won't. We'll get to that in a second. Yes, I think that's a solution. There may be even a simpler one that I thought of just kind of as you were going through that. Just making sure that our law enforcement agents are trained to vet these stories. Second, that when they get the theory, they go to the source and you find where's the hardcore evidence, where's the hard evidence, the tangible evidence that you see. And then, okay, now that we found something that can corroborate your theory, then let's go investigate it. That's how our court cases, the Supreme Court is laid out when you're talking about reasonable suspicion and probable cause, which for our listeners, basically that's the right to actually search somebody. You can't just walk up and frisk them. You got to have some specific things that line up, that then give you a conclusion to justify the search or the arrest or whatever it is. Same thing probably should happen here is you get a theory, you think it sounds viable, you being the law enforcement agent, they should be required to go check it out. Or maybe a better way to put it, the Fourth Amendment should require that they go check it out before they can go act.
You want to
on it,
remind everyone what
investigate
the
it.
Fourth Amendment is?
Right to illegal search and seizure.
There we go.
Before they go out and actually investigate this and try to search it and or seize evidence, they have to actually go and meet their legal requirements to get there by going to the source and figuring things out. I think I'd feel more comfortable there.
I would also love to hear a prosecutor's take on all this.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that.
Got a couple of defense lawyers over here.
Right. No,
Okay.
I'm kidding. I would too.
But let me turn the tables. So I have a question. Now that we've talked about this idea where the law enforcement is going to these people's house, presumably with proper Fourth Amendment protections in place.
Yeah, we'll presume that. It'll make it easier.
Make it easier. Let's talk about the evidence, right? Because if there's evidence that's been submitted, there are pictures, there's video that's been submitted to the FBI, FBI may be going to people's houses and looking for photographs, evidence, so on and so forth. How does that all affect the process for when evidence is collected in a crime? So that's your starting point. What's the process and how does it affect the process of from the point of collection to when it's being used in trial? And what is that process called?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We call it the chain of custody. And the idea is that when evidence is collected, the law enforcement agency has to be able to show this was the original item and it was not tampered with.
So let's give them an example.
So handgun would be the easiest thing. And so,
Hello, Texas.
Right. So handgun, you get fingerprints on the gun. Officer finds it at the scene. Just make it easy. Finds it at the scene. They dust it for fingerprints. They match the fingerprints. They use their technology. They take it back. The gun itself, there has to be evidentiary, or there has to be chain of custody logs where you say, okay, this detective sees the gun, put it in this bag. It was marked with this number. It was then handed to this person who then took it and locked it into this evidence locker, checked it in at this time.
At this station.
At this station. It was brought to court out of that locker. And so you have to show basically, the simple version is you have to account for every single second that piece of evidence went from the scene to sitting in that courtroom for trial.
And what happens and what is the effect of failing to do that or missing even one step in that chain of custody?
Well, you're giving me an opportunity to say...
You as the defense lawyer.
As the defense lawyer to say, well, there's a window here where it could have been tampered with. We saw that big in the O.J. Simpson trial.
Dun, dun, dun.
So what you're talking about is, all right, we've got this piece of evidence that was put into the universe by a Reddit user, and now we've got to figure out, well, okay, that was in this person's home, whatever it was, picture or whatever it was.
Yeah, let's go and say someone found a picture in their home of the children at Yellowstone. And let's make it real old school. It was a Kodak camera,
Polaroid,
Polaroid camera, Mary Jo's super hipster, loves a Polaroid camera. I mean, who doesn't? Takes a picture at Yellowstone, and the children in the Lori Vallow case happen to be in the background. She's inspired by all these Reddit groups, and she's going through her photo albums, and she's like, those kids look real familiar. Boom. Polaroid with the kids in the background.
Yeah.
So she has it. What happens if she submits it to her Armchair detective group, right?
Yeah.
How is this going to affect the chain of custody situation?
Well, and let's even heighten the stakes a little bit. Let's say that she submits the picture and there is let's say there's a Coke can that the daughter has in the picture, and then she also has the Coke can that she says she found at the scene.
I
too.
like this.
So now you submit it to the detective. Well, the problem is from there, once the detective gets it, they're probably going to have a clean chain of custody all the way up the ladder. The problem is that first step where she had the Coke can and she had the camera. I mean the picture
photo
in her home. We don't know what happened in there. That's not a sterile environment. That's not. She probably picked it up, and moved it around. Somebody else could have touched it
everywhere. Also, never. Like I know in the movies they have oh no, the murder weapon. Let me pick it up. Okay, that's so stupid. Don't
not how it happens.
That's not how it happens. Don't ever touch.
Well, yeah, and think about the
suspicious.
Coke can. It's a Coke can. Very common thing.
Trash.
Who knows? And this goes back to my vigilantism argument. How do you know that's not a Coke can that she drank herself? She saw the picture. She saw the can in the picture, and she thought, "Ooh, I'm in this now. I can be a witness." That's where you got a problem, because then it's like this could be any Coke can of any time, because
But back at you on that. I mean, if you're dusting this for fingerprints right away as a part of a proper chain of custody situation, wouldn't you be able to tell? There's literally no fingerprints from the children on here.
Right, but if you've got a witness saying, "I saw this Coke can that was dropped by this girl on this day. I've seen the picture to corroborate it." And so there could be a theory that you go down that, okay, well, she was at this we found the coke can here. That means she may have died here. And so therefore we're going to pursue this. And so that's part of the problem. Now, obviously we're keeping this very surface level.
Sure.
And if there was a real cross-examination and investigation, they would dive real deep into the wormhole in this. But these are some of the problems that you can see as you roll through some of these things.
Yeah, and one of the problems I think I'm hearing from you that you're really concerned about is waste of federal and then municipal police time and resources.
Definitely.
That could have gone towards actual more valid leads had they not been clouded by, Snow Globe 1, 2, 3 saying, I want to be in a Netflix documentary, so I'm going to embellish what little lead I do have.
Right.
So that more time is spent with me, and then, I don't know, maybe the kids wind up dying because the police got sidetracked with a less than legitimate theory.
That's a good point, too. And look, we won't beat this into the ground, but the last thing I'll say about this, and we can then now kind of close out with our conspiracy theories about this story, is that's part of the problem, is that the embellishment part. People today, and we've talked about this on this show before, they have the protection of a screen.
Yep.
They feel like they can say whatever the hell they want with no consequences. That's why we see so much arguing going on social media.
The protection of like a computer screen.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the computer screen, the tablet screen, they can talk with their thumbs. If you're imputing that type of information into a criminal investigation, when you feel protected from that screen, and then people are scared because they have to go testify under cross-examination and don't want to get charged with perjury, so they're going to stick with their story. You see the doomsday scenario I'm walking into, is that someone could feel like, ooh, Netflix, reality shows, let me put this out there, nothing bad's going to come of it because I got the screen in front of me. Subconsciously, they do it. Then all of a sudden, they're on the witness stand and they're like, well, I can't lie. I've already got this career I'm trying to build, and then it's also a crime to lie on the stand.
A very serious crime.
Very serious
actually,
crime.
Not a civil. It's
Right.
criminal.
Yeah.
Don't
and
lie.
So all of a sudden, you just see the problem that can create. And
Yeah.
and I'm going doomsday. I've kind of made it my job on the show to do that.
Should I just call you Mr. Doomsday from now on?
No, let's not do that.
It's too 1950s.
But that's part of the concern I have. So I do want to hear your thoughts on, what do you think really happened? Do you think all these things are related? Do you think it's a conspiracy, or do you think it's just a lot of coincidences?
I think it's somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
I think that, for one, I think coincidences, a lot of things are chalked up to coincidence that really shouldn't be chalked up to coincidence. But also finding the bodies of the children on his property, I mean, to me, that either reeks of you're really, really, really dumb, which is possible, or someone buried them there to try and frame you.
Ooh.
So
I don't know why I didn't think of that.
Whenever there's like massively incriminating evidence that, maybe I'm jaded, I've watched too many true crime shows, right? But when the incriminating evidence is so easily found, to a degree, and so massively incriminating, was it really incriminating evidence, or was it planted?
That's a twist. So that's a great point. Like, because that seemed really too easy to find. It seemed way too. That makes sense. I mean, I think this definitely paints the picture that the two of them planned this out. And so actually, I'm going to just piggyback off what you said, because I think it makes more sense than what I was thinking, and I won't even share that. The two of them planned this out. We've got a brother killing Lori Vallow's wife, husband. We've got
Also, why?
right. It said self-defense.
Self-defense, yeah, but like, I love my little brother, but I'm not gonna go. He's not married, right? But if he had a wife, like I'm not gonna go kill his wife. Like, no.
Well, and then the brother dies, so we don't not gonna ever hear from him as to what happened.
Guilt trip, suicide, who knows?
Or maybe she took care of him too.
Loose ends.
Because then that happens. So this happens right after she meets Daybell. Brother kills husband. Daybell's wife dies. Of course, they get married 2 weeks later. It seems very orchestrated, very planned.
Yeah, that's so sketchy to me, that timing.
Now, I want to piggyback off of what you just said. It was very easy to find the remains of the kids on June 8th. What if, because Vallow hasn't come out and talked about anything.
Silence, right?
Silence.
Which is really surprising to me, because a lot of
Kind of is, kind of isn't. Fifth Amendment right to, you don't have to self-incriminate. You want to maintain silence. I always tell my clients not to talk to anybody. But given that, on top of how easy it was to find those remains, maybe she set this whole thing up. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie Wild Things, but it kind of has a crazy twist at the end where you figure out that maybe it was one person behind the whole situation. It could be what's going on here. Now, she hasn't gotten away with anything because she's being held without bail, but that was probably not part of the plan.
Yeah, probably not.
But, I mean, maybe she set this whole thing up. Maybe they were planted back there. Maybe they did kill him, but she planted him in his, backyard. I don't know.
Yeah.
Had somebody plant them.
I don't know, but if this is like the love of her life, she has allegedly, her ex-husband knocked off by her brother, and then, she wants to like cover that up, so she kills her brother so she can marry this guy and gets rid of his wife, then why is she going to go and like put the bodies of her dead children in his yard? Unless, I don't know, maybe, and my favorite murder would be so disappointed with me right now because I'm forgetting the actual phrase, but it's the phrase that's used in the situation where a mother is so obsessed with getting the sympathy for her injured, sick, or dead child, and like that's what she lives for. There's an actual
I've heard the term too. I don't know.
It's a psychological condition.
Yeah.
That that's what she wants, right?
Right.
And so maybe she was like, okay, I feel like I'm not getting enough attention anymore from this guy that I've now married. So let's have people find my dead children and be like, oh no. Your new husband killed your children. Oh, we feel so terrible for you. It's so sad. Let us pour our empathy out for you. Maybe that was what she wanted all along.
That sounds like, that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense to me. And it'll be fun to continue. And again, listeners, we say fun.
Yeah.
This is, it is real drama. It's very sad, but this is what we're following. And it'll be interesting. And it'll be very insightful to follow through on these and see where this case goes, how the investigation goes, and what eventually happens.
And I think it'll be so interesting to see eventually how, as time goes on, especially with this trial, how the input from like the Reddit users and the Facebook groups is ultimately going to translate into leads, and how does that translate at trial, right? How are you going to be interviewing Snow Globe 123? Is she going to be on the stand?
Right.
She's like, my name's Mary Jo. I go by Snow Globe 123 on Reddit. And then there's all these other issues that come up with like authenticating what she said, because now you have all these hearsay problems and so on and so forth. And this could be an entire evidentiary book. Maybe we should write this.
It would be fun. Well, I know for one thing we're going to continue to follow it. And so,
yes, absolutely.
So that's one thing that we'll say as we close out here today is that we're excited to keep bringing this news to you. We're going to keep following this story, keep breaking down each piece of it and how it can apply to future uses. Like today, we talked about future criminal investigations.
Absolutely.
So keep listening. We'll keep bringing the news to you and keep tuning in to #Lawyered.
Thanks, y'all.